In this video, we're going to show you how to replace the engine oil pan on your Dodge Ram located at the bottom side of your engine. Using a 13mm bolt, we're going to go ahead and remove our oil drain plug. Make sure you have your catch can and your bucket underneath. At this point here, we can go ahead and put our drain plug back in. Remove this cross member. It's an 18mm socket on the front, 15mm wrench on the front. Loosen and remove the 2 bolts on the driver's side and 2 on the passenger side. When you remove that bolt, be careful. Make sure that bracket doesn't fall down on you. Ours has a little bit of rust buildup in there, so we're just going to try and knock that free. Use a pry bar if you need to. Go ahead and work that out. So we have this bracket that runs from the passenger side of the engine across to the driver's side. It's held on by a series of 15mm bolts. Let's go ahead, loosen, and remove those. And once we get these 2 bottom ones out here, we'll just continue to the other side here and remove the rest. Go ahead and take that bracket out and set that aside. Now in your cross member here, there's going to be 2 nuts for your transmission mount. We're going to go ahead and use our 15mm socket to loosen and remove those. Now on the driver's side lower portion of the engine, there's a bracket right here that bolts on the front side to the engine, the back side to the transmission, and this bottom section here with these 3 bolts holding the front differential to the bracket. Using our 18mm swivel socket and extension, we're going to go ahead and loosen and remove all 3 of these bolts. Now on each side of the engine, we're looking at the passenger side right now, there are 2 bolts on our motor mounts right here. This one here goes to a slotted hole on the mount, so we're just going to go ahead, loosen this nut probably to the end of the stud. We're going to leave it in. This lower one, we're going to remove the nut, remove the bolt, and then we're going to go ahead and repeat the same process for the driver's side. On the other side, we have a 18mm socket with our ratchet to hold the bolt. We're going to use our 18mm swivel here. Remove that, and then pull that bolt out. Let's go ahead and repeat the same process for the driver's side. Now at this point, we're going to use our jack and a block of wood, and we're going to go right at the point of the bell housing right here, right behind the oil pan. You're probably going to be using a floor jack. It's perfect to use a block of wood between there to support this. Now what we're going to do is you want to go ahead and raise up the motor and transmission. Now once we get this up, you want to go ahead and pay attention to the front side or the top side of the engine. Make sure that the fan itself does not hit the fan shroud and damage that. And the same thing goes for the air box on top of the engine. Make sure that doesn't hit the cowl for the body of the truck. You don't want to damage either one of those. So you want to crank this up as far as you can go, and then go ahead and support the engine. You're going to go ahead and put some blocks of wood between the motor mounts and the chassis itself to hold the motor up in place, so you can then remove your jack, unbolt the oil pan, and pull that out. Now that we have our blocks in by their motor mounts, we can now go ahead and remove our pole jack from the center of the vehicle. This is going to allow us to have more clearance when we unbolt and remove the oil pan. Now, removing our oil pan, there is a specific pattern on removing the bolts as well as installing the new oil pan. Now, what you want to do is go ahead on the passenger side, go to the back side of the pan, count in 5 bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is the first one you have to remove. Now you're going to switch over to the driver's side. You're also going to count in 5. That'll be the second bolt that you remove. Come back over to the passenger side. You're going to count in 4. You're going to remove that one. Switch over to the driver's side. Count in 4. Remove that one. When you come back to the passenger side, you now want to go to the 6th bolt. Come back over to the driver's side. Count the 6th bolt. What we're going to be doing is we're going to be working our way around, working our way further from the center of the pan to the outer edge of the pan, removing all of the bolts, and then pull the pan down. So let's go ahead and start. Using our 10mm socket, swivel and extension, let's go ahead and do that. The bolt here actually has a wiring harness held on by a little retaining tab. So just go ahead and reach up there, pull that off. Now the harness itself is held on by this little retainer on the front driver's side. Just simply grab that. We're going to pop this off here. I'm going to go ahead and use our mallet and bonk the pan a few times. We're going to try and separate this from the bottom side of the engine. So what I'm doing here is I'm trying to separate the pan gasket from the pan itself. The pan gasket is actually held in place by the oil pickup tube, which is bolted to the engine itself. We can't separate the pan from the engine until it's separated from the gasket. So I'm just using a pick, and I'm kind of going in between the pan and the gasket and popping this off. We're going to be replacing our gasket as well. You just want to be careful. You don't want to mark or damage the surface on the bottom of the engine when doing this. You can see that our gasket is separated from the pan. You really want to get that to happen on both sides. Here we go. We should be able to tip this back. Now the only challenge we had when removing the pan was our transmission lines here. The pan was actually hitting on this little bracket, so we just had to move this in a little bit by hand. It has a little bit of flexibility. Push the pan over and past that, and once it was past it, the pan slid right out. Now in order for us to pull down our pan gasket, we have to unbolt the oil pickup tube. There's two nuts. There is one right here. You can see when we move this here, when I remove this nut, and there's one on the front side of the engine holding the other end of this tube. Using a 13mm socket and extension, let's go ahead and get the back one here. And let's get that front one. And on the front side of the engine, I'm going to go ahead and slide the gasket over, and just beside this pickup tube is the other bolt. Let's go ahead and loosen that one. Now I want to go ahead and grab the screen in the back for the pickup and the front side here, as well as the gasket, and we're just going to wiggle this back and forth and then pull this all out and remove it together as one piece. Now right here is your dipstick here. If you want, you go ahead and push that up a little bit out of the way. It's not that big of a deal. It's not causing an issue to us. Go ahead and wiggle that pickup, and you might have a little bit of oil come out. I'm going to go ahead and pull this all out as one unit, and go ahead and set that on your bench. I'm going to go ahead and use some solvent on a towel or rag. I want to clean the surface where the old gasket was. We're going to do this all the way around the perimeter. I want to make sure this is free of any oils so that our new gasket will have a nice clean mating surface. I'm going to continue to do this all the way around the gasket seating area. Before we install our pickup tube, it's always a good practice to go ahead and replace the O-ring there with a new O-ring. Simply go ahead and slide that off. Give that a wipe down. Take that new O-ring and slide that into place. Before we press this into the engine, I'm going to go ahead and put a light coat of oil on that O-ring. And go ahead and install this unit. Before we install our gasket and our oil pickup tube, there are 4 points we want to go ahead and put a little bit of RTV on. It's going to be this spot right here. And it's going to be one spot right here. And on the back side, you're going to put some right here and some right here. Let's go ahead and bring our gasket up into place. I'm going to go ahead and line this up. I'm going to feed our pickup tube up towards the front. Kind of set that up into the hole in the front of the engine. Bring our pickup tube and our gasket up into place. Let's go ahead and get that nut started here. Let's go ahead and install the bolt on the front side of the pickup. Now, once we have that bolt in, let's go ahead and snug that down. We can go back and tighten down the nut on the back side of that pickup. We want to go ahead and torque these down to 21 foot-pounds or 250 inch-pounds. Go ahead and do the same for the front. Let's go ahead and feed our oil pan up into position. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get a couple bolts started on either side of the pan. Once we get a couple bolts in, one on each side or 3 on each side, we can go ahead and just relax that and let that pan just hang off those, and we're gonna finish getting the rest of those bolts in. Now that we have all of the bolts started, I'm going to go ahead and run all of these bolts down. I'm not going to tighten them. I just want to snug them gently. Once these are all snugged down, we're going to come back and torque them into their final position. Now at this point here, we're going to go ahead and torque down the oil pan bolts. This is going to be 105 inch-pounds or 8.75 foot-pounds. I'm going to go ahead and torque these down in the sequence provided here on your screen. install the harness onto the stud. Just push that little clip on and do the same for the forward mounted little tab here. Now at this point here, you want to go ahead and put your jack back onto the bell housing here with your block of wood. We want to raise this up just a little bit and then remove those pieces of wood from the engine mount area. Once we remove those blocks there, we're going to go ahead and lower the engine down and back onto the mounts. Now our motor is back into the mount location. Go ahead and remove your jack from underneath the vehicle and let's get those bolts installed on the mounts. Feed that bolt through the front side, bring that through, and we'll get the nut started here. I like to thread these on as far as you can by hand. While you're there, go ahead and zip that nut down on the other side as well. We're going to repeat this process for the driver's side. Let's go ahead and torque down those motor mount nuts here to 50 foot-pounds. Go ahead and repeat for the driver's side. Just going to install the 3 bolts here. Goes through the front diff into the bracket and get all 3 of these started by hand. We'll go ahead and zip them on down and then we'll torque them. Now these 3 bolts, we're going to go ahead and torque these down to 61 foot-pounds. Install the transmission mount nuts. I'm going to get these both started by hand first. Once you have those started, just go ahead and zip those down and make sure they're tight. Let's go ahead and feed this bracket up into place here. What we want to do is just get all of the bolts started by hand first. And we'll come on back and we'll torque them into position. We'll go ahead and install this one here. So we're going to install the one on the driver's side. Let's go ahead and get these 2 bolts started here. And once we get this one here started, we're just going to go ahead and repeat for the driver's side. Torque all of these bolts to 40 foot-pounds, but there is a particular pattern. Do the 4 vertical bolts first. Repeat for the other side. The next bolts you want to do are from the engine side through into the bell housing. Repeat for the other side. Then these 2 bolts going from the bell housing forward. Install your cross member here. Once you have this in position, go ahead and get your bolts installed. And then we'll go ahead and get the nuts started. Go ahead and repeat this process for the other side. Let's go ahead and tighten down the 18mm nut, and we're going to use our 15mm wrench on the bolt side. Let's go ahead and use your oil filter tool. I'm going to put this on. And we're going to spin that filter off. Make sure you have your drain bucket underneath this filter as well, because this is filled up with oil. Go ahead and spin that off. And slide that down and out. And what you want to do is go ahead, reach up in there. You want to clean off the surface of where that oil filter goes. You want to go ahead and make sure that there's nothing there. Make sure that the old O-ring from the original oil filter is not stuck here. Make sure that surface is nice and clean. Now, before installing our oil filter, we want to go ahead and use the oil for the vehicle, and we're going to fill up the filter. The reason for this here is that once we put this onto the vehicle and we start it, this will help prevent a dry start. So I'm going to keep on adding the oil until it doesn't take any more through the center port. Take a little bit of this oil, put it around the seal itself. This will help the installation and sealing of the filter. I'll go ahead and line up that filter and get that threaded on. Now, when installing an oil filter, you should never really have to tighten it beyond hand tight. Make sure you got a good grip on that. Make sure that's good and snug. Go ahead and wipe down that filter. Now go ahead and snug up that drain plug. We're going to go ahead and torque that to 25 foot-pounds. Now, underneath the hood here, you want to go ahead and locate your engine oil dipstick. Pull that out. Go ahead and wipe that down. And we're going to set that aside for now. Next thing you want to do is locate your oil fill cap right here on the driver's side of the engine. Go ahead and spin that off. What you can normally do is look on the cap here, see if there's any identifying information about the grade of oil or anything like that you want to be able to use. Our particular one doesn't, but it says see owner's manual. Identify the correct oil required for this application. Go ahead and grab your funnel, set that in, and go ahead and add the appropriate amount of oil. This particular engine requires 7 quarts. We've already added about 3/4 to a quart of oil to the filter. So we're going to add 6 quarts of oil and then check our level. I'm going to go ahead and remove that funnel. Set that aside. Install your oil cap here. Go ahead and install your cap, twist that on, make sure it's locked into place. Install your dipstick here. Once you've done this here, you now want to go ahead, hop into the vehicle, start it up. Run for about 10 to 15 seconds, let that oil run through the engine, then shut it off. Once you shut it down, come around here. You want to go ahead and check the level of the oil. Go ahead and pull this out. Now it's going to take a couple times because there will be some splash up on the dipstick. So go ahead, give that a wipe down. Reinsert it. And pull that back out. Now what we're looking for is for our oil level to be inside this crosshatch right here where it clearly states safe. There is a point down here where it says add. If you're down into the add section, you're going to want to go ahead and add upwards of a full quart of oil. At this point here, or inside here, we can add a little bit more oil to get it to the top of the safe, but anywhere in this area is good. Go ahead and reinstall that dipstick. Lock that into place, and you're all set.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.